what normally, as we come up on a Thursday or a Friday, we're going to talk, a lot of times about college ball. We're going to talk about, college playoffs. We're going to talk about what's going to happen on a Sunday. And now when we talk to Eddie, as he's joining us here now, Chef Eddie Jackson, so I'm no longer going to ask you about defensive schemes and cover zero. Now it's going to be about did he put lemon extract instead of like Eddie? It's a different conversation we're having now. Thanks so much for joining us here this morning.
Hey, what's going on, Mike? Good morning to you, brother.
I am, it's so great. And I talk about it all the time because so my dad was a longtime coach, a lot of different sports at high school level. And I've talked to coaches and general managers and players, for the past 30 years. And you realize that everyone's story, it's not what people think. People think it's all the same, Eddie. They think it's, you go to a big school, which you did, they think they translate it into a pro career, which you did. And then the story can be varied, but people just assume that everything's very easy for individuals. And as I say to people, well, regardless of the sport you go into, and if you're a Div 1 big time athlete, your chance is still, Eddie, it's only 2.5%. It is small. Your career, I think the average career is probably 2.5 years. I mean, you have a very small window to make something of yourself. So if you're able to do it twice, which is easily what you have done, not only a pro career, but now you've got a full-fledged career in the food industry and television. This is not a fluke. Both take sacrifice. It all takes work, and it takes a lot of talent. So clearly, you got all of that.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of dedication. And that's so funny that you say that and put it that way, because a lot of people, they do assume like, oh, if you go to a big school, you're going to the NFL or you're going to the NBA, and that's not true. I was not drafted. I was a free agent. So basically I had to start all over again, basically coming in as a freshman in college and prove myself, improve my worth, and work harder than the guys that were drafted in front of me. And that's what it was, a lot of dedication. And I ended up making the team, and ended up having a pretty good career in the NFL, played 5 years. So, longer than most.
Yes, it is longer than most. And the window of opportunity to catch a coach's eye, if you're not one of the chosen ones, which you weren't, you somehow have to do something in camp, in preseason, where you may hardly see the field. So what did you, for the Panthers, for instance, what do you think was that moment? Like, how did you, in your mind, be able to look at that franchise, look at Eddie Jackson, go, we need this guy on the team? Was there a moment? Was there a time? Was there a play? Like, what do you think it was overall that got you into the show? What was it in that short period of time?
Well, for me, this goes, with a lot of guys in my position where you're free agents. I was projected to be a 3rd round draft pick. Somehow, some way, I fell and didn't get drafted. But I always knew that I was good enough. So when I went to Carolina, there was a guy that they drafted in the 1st round, Chris Gamble, played at Ohio State, played the national championship game. I think he got drafted 14th overall to Carolina. And I knew I was better than him. I was faster than him. So what I did was, in practice, whatever he would do in practice, I always told myself I have to one-up him in practice every single day, because this is the 1st round draft pick playing my same position. So if he would get an interception, I was like, tell myself I got to get 2 interceptions a day in practice. So I always tried to one-up the guy that was supposed to be better than me in practice. So that was my mindset every single day.
Well, I would suggest it's your mindset once you get into food, because someone puts out some chicken dish or a pork beef or whatever it is, they have something on it. In order to win the competition or get better, your dish has to be better. Somehow you had to find a way to one up the dish. So in some ways, you're still doing that.
I am. Everything is a learning process. When I got into Food Network, when I was on Food Network Star, and I was competing, it was the same concept, and I think that's why I'm at where I'm at today. When I did Food Network Star, I was competing against all of these people that, some people had 4 and 5 restaurants. So they've been cooking for 20 years and been to these prestigious culinary schools. first round draft picks. And here I am coming into this competition basically as a free agent, so to speak. And I'm looking at, all of my competitors. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I'm better than that. So every week, I would try to one up those people and so that I could catch the eye of Bobby Flay and Giada. And back then, it was Bob Tushman that was the president of Food Network. And that's how I won Food Network star. So that's what, I take that same concept that I use, going into the NFL, being a free agent, basically having a chip on my shoulder and trying to warm up those people that were presumed to be in front of me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Talking to Eddie Jackson here this morning on Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw, Mike Richards. Here in the CFL, the Canadian Football League, so a lot of guys, from big schools, and a lot of, who sometimes end up playing here for a little bit and then go down and play in the NFL. It's one of my favorite things. But one thing that is always a constant, depending on the school they come from, so especially if they're from down south, if they're from the South and they'll come up here, we'll start talking about food. I know what they're going to start talking about. I know the kind of food they're going to start talking about. And let's just say, Eddie, it's not slimming. It is not slimming food. But somehow, because I think you're a Southern guy. I think you're Georgia originally. You're from down there. So that's, kind of Paula Deen, put in some extra butter and some cream in that gravy. Because look, I love it all. I mean, if I'm getting into biscuits and gravy or chicken fried chicken or chicken fried steak, I'm in line. I'm at the Cracker Barrel. I don't mind going in and having a coma when lunch is over. So I have friends in Houston. I've been down that way. I know what the food looks. So the thing is, before we should kind of go back just a step before you get into the food. You also were a personal trainer, so you can't just be having that kind of food. I mean, there has to be an understanding of nutrition. And what it does to the body that you also must have taken, even you get into the delicious and rich foods, but there is also a balance to it. And sometimes that's not easy. And obviously you found that somehow. I'm just curious, is it because of the football background and being physically fit to understand? Because it's not common, I would say this way, that you can balance those things. Because sometimes, look, some of these guys go back down there once they get home and
it's over.
Their mom's cooking again. They're looking for the couch. So what did you do? Why did, again, this balance for you?
Well, I grew up, my dad he still is a personal trainer. So we had gyms when I was growing up. I had a gym in Houston for a while. And, just staying fit and being conscious of, what I put into my body is something that's been a part of my life for a long time. But what I tell people is what, when, how. That's how I live my life. What to eat, when to eat, and how to eat. Trust me, I love biscuits and I love fried chicken and barbecue. But the reality is we can't eat that all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know what to eat and I know when to eat and I know how to eat. I know I can't eat that stuff all the time. It's almost like a reward to me. So, I take care of myself. I work out. I do something active. I'm not saying that I'm, like The Rock in there lifting all these weights every single day, but I try to be active every single day. And I eat a well-balanced meal, 3 times a day. I'm always trying to stay active so that I look forward to, I know on Saturday, I'm going to get me some brisket, some ribs, you know what I mean? So I'm looking forward to those things, man. It's almost like a treat for me.
Oh, it is. That is definitely a treat. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is that for a lot of us and a lot of men, and certainly men very, very proud to cook now, there was a time where guys didn't really talk a lot about that. It wasn't really the cool thing to do. But now you see this influence of cooking in all areas. And of course, food television being a massive part of it. But the one thing I always say is, so I go in Master Chef or something, and then here comes Gordon, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh dear, oh my, damn, look what you've done, yeah, damn." Because when it comes to the baking part, if I lift up that box and I see milk and eggs, and I'm going, oh no, they're gonna want me to bake, and a lot of guys and a lot of people, because it's science now. You can play around with the gravy and sauces and meats and spices, and can kind of have a little flexibility. Is very unforgiving when it comes to baking. So baking to me is the hardest thing. So how do you get that in your background? How do you get with baking? Because that's hard.
So with me, my grandmothers were both chefs growing up, and that's how I got my start in cooking from them. And they both were amazing bakers. And so the very first thing that I learned how to do was make biscuits. And then from there, it was, like pies and cakes and things like that. I don't claim myself to be a pastry chef, but the very first thing that I learned how to do was to bake. And I tell people, if you learn how to bake first, then you're going to be an amazing cook, because baking, pastry chefs are the best cooks out there, because they understand the science, why do things brown, the fat ratios, they understand these things. And that is how you become a good cook, understanding the basics of why food comes out like it does.
Yeah, it's these measurements. I mean, they're exact. You put too much of one thing or the other, it doesn't rise, it doesn't do whatever. It's tough. And so now, as we're looking at the Big Bake, and I think also up here, Brad Smith, I think, is actually one of the hosts up here, who's got a little bit of a football background. His dad was a commissioner of the league. A really interesting guy. And there's other judges. So when you meet some of these people, I mean, like Bobby Flay is I mean, this is so you're looking at sort of a Peyton Manning of the food world. I mean, it's amazing.
So Bobby Flay is I've been on record saying this. Bobby Flay is like my mentor. Bobby Flay is my Jerry Rice. Before I got into, I'm a 49ers fan. I'm a 49ers fan because of Jerry Rice. Before I got on Food Network, I was a Food Network fan because of Bobby Flay. And the very first person that I guarded in the NFL was Jerry Rice.
Oh, wow.
When he played for the Seahawks. And the very first person that I met from Food Network was Bobby Flay. So I love Bobby Flay, man. I look up to him. He's a very nice guy. He's taught me a lot, and we do a lot of work together now. So it's pretty exciting.
He's a very interesting dude too. He comes up here because because of the horses, right? He's big horse race guy, right? So he'll come up here and you'll see him in the stands. And then Giada, that series they did going over to Italy was just amazing. And I'm curious if you were able to have Eddie Jackson visits X, where would it be for you food wise? Where would your show be? Where would you go for a food show if you could travel?
Africa.
Really? Very interesting.
I would definitely go to Africa. My cooking stuff, the very first cuisine that I basically mastered was the Caribbean style, specifically like Jamaica and these different things. I lived in Miami for 15 years, so I would go to Jamaica all the time, and I fell in love with the cuisine. A lot of those spices, they come from Africa. A lot of different cuisines, that the start is that whether it be North or South Africa. And it's just something that I want to do, kind of get back to my roots and figure out where these different, these cultures, these spices and all these things that I fell in love with, where they come from, and just kind of get back to the basics.
Well, you are one interesting and very nice guy. I really appreciate that you joined us here this morning. I was looking forward to it for the last couple of weeks when I knew we were going to have you on, and you certainly did not let us down. And it's wonderful to see you do what you're doing with your life. And I think in a very real way, I'm hoping that guys who are playing in the NFL, or they're playing in the CFL, or playing professional football, take a look at what you've done with your life to realize that football can be short, football can be brief, and it is okay to reach down and look for something else. It should be inspiring. And I don't know if you feel that way about your life, but in talking with you here today and seeing what you do on television and what you've done, I think it truly is inspiring. I think it is of influence. So I think what you're doing really with your life, Eddie, might be the most important stuff that you've ever done.
Man, Mike, I really appreciate that, brother.
Well, look, you take care. Best of luck. And don't serve the fish raw.
Damn.
Take care, my brother. Thanks so much.
All right, brother. Peace.
That is Eddie Jackson joining us here this morning as we talk Food Network, his career, which is unbelievable. The Big Bake, which is on Food Network Canada. And as I said, in this household, food television is on all the time. It is